Hey all, so in this video we'll be making a checkbox component in Figma, and we'll be using variant and Boolean component properties as well as component interactions to be able to hover over each component and give it a background color, as well as to be able to click on an item and check it on or off with just creating one interaction and not having to do it separately for each component instance. And we'll begin by creating separate pieces of the component as separate subcomponents. We'll have a separate component for the caret, expanded and collapsed. We'll have a separate component for the checkbox. We will have a separate component for our pseudo icon here, and we'll have a separate component for the text layer. So to begin, create a new Figma file, and we'll start by creating our parent icon components. So we'll have a caret that's represents an expanded view, and we'll have a caret that represents a collapsed view. I'm going to go and get my icons from the phosphor icons, but you can use any icon that you like. So this is going to be our collapsed one, or expanded. And this is going to be our expanded one. Okay, and from here we're going to, let's just call it parent, and we'll create a component set. And then for our property, we'll just call it expanded. And this one is going to be the default one, no. This one's going to be yes. So this is our first small component. And the reason that I'm putting an underscore in front of the component name is that if I were to publish this library elsewhere for other designers to use, and if I didn't want them to be able to access this small subcomponent, then putting an underscore will make sure to hide that component and it will not get published. So for our the second thing that we're going to do is create a separate component for this little bullet, the dot icon. And for this one, we can just create ourselves. Make a circle, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll add auto layout, and we'll set it to fixed width and height. We'll give them both components dark gray color, and then from here we'll just call it underscore child. So these are our first two subcomponents. Now we're going to create our checkbox. So for the checkbox, let's grab a check icon. Same thing here, we'll add auto layout. And then we'll want to put it in the center. Let's give it a stroke and a border radius. And update the color to darker gray. From here we can add another variant, and let's do one that's just indeterminate or partial check. So this one's going to be the partial check, and one more we're going to make just an empty one. Let's call this state checked, partially checked, empty. for our next component, so we're going to make a separate component for this icon here. As you can see, in this case, I'm using the emojis and I'm not really going to have a real icon component set, but if you want to have it and utilize the instant swap, you can do it. I'm just going to keep it very simple for this tutorial. I'll just call it icon. And the last component that we're going to create is a text component. So we'll call it text. And I am going to wrap this inside the auto layout. Okay, so now we have all of our pieces and we can create one item component. So what we're going to do, we're going to grab a parent, then a check, icon, and text. Okay, so it definitely looks like the checkbox is too big compared to our text and the icon, so we'll actually make this a little bit bigger. So now we can create our component called item. And the first thing that we're going to do is our first property, which is going to be a Boolean. We'll call it icon, and then we'll apply this layer to the icon property. So now if we had an item component and we didn't want to include icon, we can just toggle this off and it will be hidden. So we can do the same thing with the checkbox. We can create a new property that says show checkbox, and now we can toggle both of this on or off. So from here we'll want to add a couple different views. One is we want to have the item expanded, and another one we just want to have it as a child item. So for this one we're going to create a new variant, and this one is going to be parent expanded, and this one is going to be a child. And we're going to rename this property to variant, and this one is going to be parent collapsed, parent expanded, and child. So the next thing that we're going to do is that we want to add some interactivity to this icon button here. So as you can see in this prototype, this icon button has a separate hover state versus this part of the component, and the reason for that is that hovering and clicking over this section of the component is going to function as checking or unchecking the item, whereas this one is going to function as expanding or collapsing the item. So for that reason, they have different hover states. So what we're going to do is first, let's select both of this, and we're going to give them a border radius. And from here, we'll just do copy paste And for this tool, we will give them a background fill. And now we're going to add a second property. And we'll call it hovered. And the default is going to be no. And for this tool, we'll say yes. And the last part here is going to be to add component interactions. So we want, when you hover over this collapsed view, we want to add a background color. So we'll add it while hovering, and we'll make it a little softer. But then if you were to click on this one, we want to change it to expanded. And then same thing for this one. When you hover over it, we want to add the background color. And if you were to click on it, it's gonna go to the collapsed view. So let's actually take this component and we're going to test it out how it functions. So as you can see this, you hover over it, and once you click on it, it changes the icon. And before we move on, I'm going to make a couple small stylistic changes to this component here. So looking at this item as a whole, it would definitely be nicer if the stroke width of this one was a little bit thicker, and I'd also want to change the colors of this to be more like navy, maybe something like this. It just looks a little bit better. And then we'll make this a little bit thicker as well. And maybe I will drop the color a little bit. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add hover interactivity for this part of the component here, which is going to function as checking the component on or off. And so one thing that I already did here is that I put these two layers into one group, one auto layout frame. And what we can do from here is I'm also going to give it a little bit padding on the left and right. And now we're going to copy the set, and for this set here, we're going to add a fill, and we're just going to match it to our hover color that we have for the expand and collapse button here. And we're actually going to add a little bit more padding on top and the bottom, and we'll also give it a 4 pixel border radius. So now we just need to make sure that we have an additional variant property here. Covered, no, and this one is going to be no. This one is yes. And now we can add the links. So what we're going to do for this one, when you hover over it, it's gonna go to this one. This one is going to go to this one, and this one is gonna go to this one. Now we can also test it out with our component instance here. And one thing, as you can see, the height of this one is now 40 pixels, but this one is still 32 by 32. So we're actually going to adjust this a little bit so that it matches. small but annoying thing here is that, as you can see, I did not create this hovered property before copy pasting this component set here. So now I'll have to update all the variant properties to say, well, like, oh, this is a child, this is parent expanded, and this one is parent collapsed. So the next thing that we're going to do is that we actually need to create variants for different checkbox states. So this one is checked. Next one that we're going to have, we'll actually now create the property first, and it will be a variant, and we'll call it state checked. Checkbox. So this one's going to be checked. Now we're going to copy paste, and this one will make empty, and we'll change this one to empty. And this one is going to be partially checked. Also, now if you check the prototype tab, you can see that all the hovering interactions are preserved in this new sets. What we can also do here is add some clicking interactions. So I'm not going to do anything with this partially checked one, but what we can do is add checking the items using the clicks. So after this one is hovered over this one and click, we can uncheck it, and same as for this one, and then it will go the same way the other way around. And again, I'm not doing anything with the partially checked one, because even with this ones, like creating the prototypes, it can get pretty confusing, and it might not really make any sense functionally. So which is also one of the reasons why sometimes you may not want to use the component interactions. But again, just to demonstrate how the interactions would work, you can pretty much create the links here, and it will apply to any instance of the component. So the last thing that we'll want to do with this component is to create different levels. So as you can see in this example here, we can have it pretty much cascading down. So what we're going to do, we're going to create the property first, and we'll call it level and give it a value of 1 by default. What we're going to do from here is we're going to copy this set, and we'll give it a level 2. And we're also going to add the left padding and set it to 24. Then we're going to do the same thing for the third level. And for this one, we'll do 48. And for the last one, we're going to do level 4. And the padding is going to be 96. Once again, if you go to the prototype tab here, you'll see that all the interaction links are preserved. So at this point, the component is ready to be tested with an example. One small thing we're going to do before is I'm just going to set the icon Boolean value to false, because we assume that maybe most of the time we don't want to have the icon, so we don't want it to be showing by default. So now we're going to grab this example here. And we're just going to see if we can recreate it with our newly built component. So the component works as expected, and we're able to recreate this example here, but we still need to double check the interactions. So you can do that from the prototype tab, and from here again you can just kind of sort of click around and make sure that it still indeed works. So that's about it for the checkbox tree component. I am going to leave a link to this file in the description, so feel free to duplicate it if you'd like. And so one thing to note is that this component definitely has a lot of variance, and it's a pretty large component, and typically I would try to avoid creating a big component such as this one unless I'm 100% sure that I'm going to use all of this variance and that I need the hover state for prototypes and such. So yeah, typically if you're able to trim this component down to make it smaller for your use case, definitely do that. But again, for this tutorial, just because we're going over so many different Figma features, it kind of made sense to create a big one like this one. So yeah, please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.